Okay, here we are once again to talk about movies. Last year I made a video where I sort of was showing you my DVD collection here, but that was made for Joel Haver's Shoot a Movie during the Oscars challenge. So I only really had 3 hours to get through the whole collection, and I didn't make it through the entire thing. So today I have the rest of them here, and we're going to go through them one by one, just like last time. It should be a good time. I'm going to use the same scoring system as I did last year, where every single movie gets either a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10 rating, and sometimes above that as well. I think it's a nice rating system for this collection because pretty much all the movies that are in here, you know, even if my feelings have changed about them now, they were all like very important to me, at least at some point in my life, you know. And that's kind of something actually that I forgot to talk about when I made the first video, because each one of them is kind of connected in some way to different periods of my life, or sometimes even specific events. Sometimes I would even go to a record store and like to buy a DVD and be like, I'm buying this because of what's going on in my life right now, because this is going to be almost like a diary for me. And I feel like that's kind of what the purpose that this collection serves for me. There are movies in here that I've had since I was a teenager, and when I watch them, it really does kind of bring me back to that time, or it brings back some of those feelings anyway. I wouldn't exactly call it nostalgia, but it is something like that, where it's a way of just reminding myself of where I came from, in a way. And I think that pretty much any collector will tell you similar things about their collections. It's kind of a way of documenting your own life, you know, and kind of like leaving breadcrumbs for yourself. And I guess that's all I really wanted to say to kind of set this video off. So let's just kind of start getting into it, I suppose. First up, we got My Own Private Idaho. This is a Gus Van Sant movie. I actually haven't seen it since I was a teenager. It's actually the latest addition to this collection. So I don't feel like I can really talk about the movie all that much, but I will say this is the only movie I've seen with River Phoenix in it. I remember really liking this movie, and I'm excited to see it again now. I'm a big fan of Gus Van Sant. There was a day when I was maybe 18, 19 years old. I had seen this movie already a couple times, and I knew I really liked it. And I was at a record store with some of my friends, and I was going to buy this. I was like, I had it in my hand. I was going to buy this movie. But then my friend was like, I don't think you should buy that movie. I think you should buy Princess Mononoke. And for whatever reason, I listened to him. And this is probably going to be my hottest take of the day. But I gotta tell you, I don't really care for Ghibli movies very much. At that time, I hadn't seen a Ghibli movie before, so Princess Mononoke was my first one. But then when I actually got it home and watched it, I was like, man, I fucking should have bought My Own Private Idaho instead. So anyway, I was like hit with that memory the other day, just last week really. And I was like, I'm finally going to make up for my past mistakes and get myself a copy of this movie. This copy is actually like a Korean-Chinese version, I think. I mean, I can play it. I tested it out. But it only has Korean and Chinese subtitles, but the audio is in English. And it's actually a full-screen version as well. It's 4:3 aspect ratio, which I think is kind of neat. 10 out of 10. Next movie is Drowning by Numbers. It's a British black comedy. It's got a lot of British wit and also like a lot of British nastiness to it. Peter Greenaway, who directed this, he's better known for a movie called The Cook, The Thief, His Wife, and Her Lover. That movie has more like a cult status to it. I haven't seen it yet, actually. That's the one I kind of want to see next, now that I've seen this one, and I know I love this one so much. But for Drowning by Numbers, this is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. Okay, The Blair Witch Project. I honestly would say that this is kind of the perfect horror movie. I know that with found footage horror, a lot of people have mixed feelings, or it can be a bit divisive, but this was the pioneer. This movie came out at a time when I still was very young, like I was very young and naive And when I first saw this movie, I watched it by myself, and I believed it was real. You know what I mean? I think that's the thing about this one that makes it a perfect movie for me. They really duped me. And that is such a wonderful experience. If you're watching a horror movie like this and you actually believe it's real, it doesn't really get any better than that, honestly. And unfortunately, I feel like found footage movies like this it's kind of like a one and done thing. Like, since this movie was made, the jig is up. You know what I mean? Any other found footage movie can't achieve that same effect. It can't. You can't fool me. You can fool me once. You know what I'm saying? You can only get fooled once when it comes to found footage movies. Anyway, best of its kind. Easy 12 out of 10 for me. Well, I guess I have a copy of Napoleon Dynamite. I'm not a huge fan of Napoleon Dynamite. I feel like maybe it's time for me to give it a rewatch, though. When this movie came out, I was really excited for it. It looked like a great oddball comedy. It looked like a fresh take on comedy. But when I watched it, I just wasn't that into it. To be honest, I think I bought this movie just because it was not a first date with a girl, but it was like an early period of dating with this one girl. And I think, again, as I was saying earlier, that sometimes that's why I will pick up a movie. It's just because it's like, connected to a specific moment in my life. For now, though, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. But now that I've seen it in my collection once again, I sort of forgot that it was in here. I'm curious to watch it again. Inglourious Basterds, Quentin Tarantino. This was actually, I think, the first Quentin Tarantino movie that I actually liked. I remember I watched this in the theater when it came out. I loved it then, and I still love it today. I do think it is one of the better Tarantino movies. Before I saw this, I had seen Pulp Fiction and I had seen Reservoir Dogs, but I do think that I was too young to really appreciate them at that time. But I think when this one came out, it was just like, I was just a little bit older, and it was the first one that I really, I got it. And then I went back and watched Pulp Fiction again. I watched Reservoir Dogs again, and I continued exploring his movies. Yeah, this is such a great movie, man. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. 50-50? I'm a huge fan of these kinds of early 2000s comedies, a lot of the Judd Apatow type comedies that were coming out around that time. And I think this was the first one that I saw that had a, more serious subject matter. It's lighthearted, but it is also dealing with death at the same time. It's also a movie that I feel like has a lot of heart. Yeah, 10 out of 10 for 50-50. This is a movie called 1 Hour Photo. One of Robin Williams' more psychological thriller type movies. At this time, I was so used to seeing Robin Williams playing, family-friendly characters. And it was just very exciting for me to see him taking on a role like this. He plays a guy that works at a photo shop. And he's going through some pictures, and he becomes obsessed with this family that keeps coming into the store to develop their photos, and he becomes a total creep about it. It's Robin Williams with bleach blonde hair. It's just it's a creepy movie. It's a real creepy movie. I really like it. It's a 10 out of 10 for me. Next up, we got a movie called Blood Jungle, okay? This is a movie that I don't think you'll ever be able to find this movie. Maybe you can somewhere online. This was an independent film that I supported on Kickstarter, and that's how I have a copy of it. Man, yeah, I gotta rewatch this actually. I haven't seen it since I received it, and that was maybe 13 years ago. But I do remember really enjoying it. It kind of felt to me like a Jodorowsky movie, but if it was like a very low budget Jodorowsky movie, basically. It's just a really out there kind of movie. And it gets a 10 out of 10. Oh, The Virgin Suicides. I think this might be, for me, my favorite Sofia Coppola movie. Watching this movie kind of lines up with some of my earliest memories of being attracted to girls and wondering about the world of girls. And this movie does such a great job of playing into that sort of mystery of what a girl's world is like, and having only little glimpses of it here and there, and kind of getting lost in your own imagination of what it would be like. And it's also a very sad story. I mean, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but the movie is called The Virgin Suicides. This is an easy 14 out of 10 for me. This movie is called Jerry. It's a Gus Van Sant movie about these two guys. They're both named Jerry, and they get lost in the desert together. And that's really the whole movie. It is a very, very slow movie. Mostly, it is just them walking through the desert, and that's kind of it. They do have conversations from time to time, and sometimes they're just like trying to figure out how they're going to get out of this desert. Sometimes they're trying to just come up with plans, like deciding which direction to go and stuff like that. For whatever reason, I really love it. I've seen this movie like probably at least 50 times, which if you think about it, I mean, it's kind of fucked up that I watched it that many times because it is just people walking. The sound design in this movie is amazing as well, and they do an amazing job of kind of capturing this idea of like a desert mirage. They don't do it in a cliche way, but there is kind of like a desert madness in this movie that I really like. This is one that I feel like I really got to do a full review for it on this channel at some point because it is really one of my all-time favorite movies. This one, maybe like a 50 billion out of 10 for me. Funny Games. This is the US version of Funny Games. Probably one of the more disturbing movies in my collection. This is a Michael Haneke movie, and interesting thing about this one is he made this movie twice, like shot for shot. He did this once in German, and then again he did a US version. I think I prefer this one. I've seen both, and I think I prefer this one. But this is also the first one that I saw, and sometimes I think I am someone who has like a bias for the first thing. You know, there's a word for that where it's like the first one that you see is the one you like the most. Do you know what I'm talking? There's a word for it. But yeah, I also just really like Michael Pitt. I like Naomi Watts a lot. Brady Corbet is in this, as well as what's his name? Tim Roth is also in this. The casting is just incredible. It's also just like very surreal. You know, a lot of people talk about this movie as if it is a commentary on violence in media, which I do understand where people are coming from with that. But I personally there is one monologue in this movie that happens very late in the movie, and I'm not going to spoil it for you, but it does give me a different impression. I think this movie, to me anyway, is more about challenging reality itself. Yeah, this movie blows my mind. Freaking 10 out of 10, easy. My son, what have ye done? This is one of Werner Herzog's American features. It stars Michael Shannon, Willem Dafoe, and Chloe Sevigny. You will not see scenes like this in any other movie. I've never seen anything else like it. David Lynch also produced this movie. I think this is like a standout. In terms of Werner Herzog movies, to me, this is a major standout. It is about a guy who is very mentally disturbed, kind of becomes obsessed with killing his own mother. I'm not going to say anything more about it than that. This is it's going to be an 18 out of 10. The Departed. This one is such a fun one. I saw this in the theater when it came out, you know, and it was such a great experience. Amazing performances all around. The story is exciting. It's based on a Korean movie. I forget what the Korean version is called, but that one is good as well. I've seen both of them. I would say with this one, over time, having watched it a few times, you know, the fun sort of wears off when you already know all the twists and turns. To me, with a movie like this, the first time you watch it really is the only one that counts. I do think this is a great movie. This is a 10 out of 10. This is a movie called I Heart Huckabees. This was the movie where I discovered Jason Schwartzman, which has led me to want to watch everything that guy does, pretty much. As a young adult, this movie meant a lot to me. It kind of introduced me to philosophy as a concept, really. As an adult, though, I think it is more like philosophy light. The ideas presented in it are not as complicated as I once thought they were. Still a great movie, though. I think it's a David O. Russell movie as well. Yeah, it's a David O. Russell movie, which I have heard he's a pretty rough director to actually work with. He's very hard on his cast and the people he works with. But yeah, I Heart Huckabees was important to me, very important to me as a young adult, and still love it today. It's fun to revisit sometimes. It's 10 out of 10. Okay, so this movie is called Vulgar. And actually, I don't know what this is. I knew it was in here, but I've never seen it. I have no idea how I acquired this movie. You know what? Maybe I'll watch it. I don't know. Maybe I'll watch it. But for the time being, can't really give it a score. Trainspotting. This is a classic Danny Boyle movie. I had a pretty bad problem with opiates for like a better part of like 7 or 8 years. I never took heroin though. I was kind of like a low-level opium addict in a way, where I was taking the soft stuff. I don't even want to get into that because I don't want to inspire anybody. But even so, I feel like a movie like this, when you are going through similar experiences, you know, it's comforting to see a movie like this. Kind of scary, I'm sure, as well, for people who are not accustomed to drug use or have never had those kinds of experiences. It's not really a movie that I would say is even realistic in a lot of ways, or maybe I don't really know. I mean, my drug habits never got as bad as it did for the characters in this movie. 10 out of 10 for Trainspotting. Now we're going to talk about Love Liza. I also did a review of this movie on my channel, and it's actually one of the most successful videos that I made. And talking about drug addiction, I mean, this is also a really good one, dealing with that kind of subject matter. Philip Seymour Hoffman plays a guy that has just lost his wife to suicide, and he's having trouble dealing with that, and so he gets addicted to huffing gasoline. This is a movie that oftentimes, when I hear people talk about it, they just don't take it seriously. They find it to be too depressing in a way that it's kind of laughable, I guess. Or at least that's what I've seen online. And actually, that's the reason that I decided to make a review of this movie, because I felt like I was the only person who'd taken it seriously. I really find this movie to be comforting in a lot of ways, and relatable as well because of my own experiences with addiction. Again, you can go watch my review of this movie if you would like to hear my full thoughts on it. 42 out of 10. Gummo. This is Harmony Korine's debut. Aside from Kids, he wrote the movie Kids, but this is his directorial debut. It doesn't really tell a traditional story exactly. It's more so just a look at the lives of these characters who are living in a town that was ravaged by a tornado. It's kind of like little, I don't know if the word vignette is the right word, but it's something like that. Like, it's just like miniature stories. You get introduced to characters. Sometimes you only see them for like a scene. It mostly follows these two kids that are sniffing glue and like killing cats and stuff. It's a pretty weird movie, man. That's what I would say about it, but I actually think it's great. It's going to be a 10 out of 10 from me. Wes Anderson, The Life Aquatic. This was a life-changing movie for me, for real. I remember seeing the trailer for this movie and immediately, like, just knowing that I needed to see it. If you know the trailer, you probably know what I mean. There's like a song. Bill Murray's wearing like a helmet, and there's a song that plays in, and he starts doing a little dance to it. And it's a movie that sort of feels like the mission statement is to kind of show that there's still a lot of beauty in flawed people, you know? I think this movie deserves at least a 17 out of 10. We're now talking about Grizzly Man. This is one of my all-time favorite movies. It's a documentary about a man named Timothy Treadwell, who was he was a wildlife enthusiast. But the reason this documentary was made is because he is someone that, for multiple summers in his life, he went and he lived amongst the bears. He went into the woods by himself, and tragically, he did die. He was eaten by a grizzly bear in the end. If you watch this movie, you will learn that Timothy was not well. He had a lot of struggles in his life. He had a lot of insecurities. And in some ways, even though it is true that he was very passionate about wildlife, you can tell that the real reason that he was doing this thing, going to live with the bears, was really just to try to escape from his real life. I think for me, coming out of this movie, I find it to be very inspiring, you know? And I do think that's maybe not the healthiest takeaway, to look at the life of Timothy Treadwell and feel inspired. But I think what I see in Timothy is really just a guy that he was brave enough to just be like, fuck you. I don't belong here, and so I'm gonna go live in the woods with the bears. And sometimes I honestly wish I had that kind of bravery to do something like that. There's a lot going on in this movie, and I think I'm not going to say anything more about it. I think you should all watch it and have your own experience with it. Grizzly Man, I gotta give it like a 40 billion zillion out of 10. Okay, we got Mr. Lonely. This is another Harmony Korine film. I think this was his first foray into like a studio movie. And apparently it was a very hard time for him. He had a hard time dealing with all the things that come with working with a production company. And on top of that, I have heard that also just in his personal life, he was just mentally not doing so great during the making of this movie. However, I will say that I don't think any of that really comes through in the filmmaking. I think it's still a pretty strong movie. It does feel like an outlier in his filmography in a way. And I will say for me personally, I did watch this again maybe a couple years ago, and I didn't really like it as much as I used to when I was younger. I still think it's a pretty strong film though. It's certainly a one of a kind, much like all of his movies are very unique. For me, this one gets a 9 out of 10. This is a movie called Kill List. This is a Ben Wheatley movie. I plan to do a review of this at some point, so I'm not going to talk about it a whole lot, but this is like a horror thriller movie about a guy that is kind of going through a hard time. He's sort of out of work. He's ex-military. He needs to be making some money. He's kind of letting his family down. And so he gets this opportunity to become a hitman, and the movie sort of follows him on 3 different assassinations that he has to do. Somewhat recent addition to this collection as well. I just really wanted to revisit it, and this one's definitely a 10 out of 10 for me. Milk. This is a Gus Van Sant movie about Harvey Milk. Harvey Milk was the first openly gay man to be elected to office in San Francisco. He was also tragically murdered by this very insecure and scared man named Dan White. I think that was his name. There's some aspects to this movie that feel a little bit more like just, typical Hollywood filmmaking. It's stuff that's you can kind of see through it a little bit, if that makes sense. But I do think it's a great movie. I would give it a 10 out of 10. This is a movie called The Place Beyond the Pines. This is a crime thriller directed by Derek C. in France. It is a very heavy drama, freaking amazing movie. It is a 12 out of 10 for me. Forgetting Sarah Marshall. This is my favorite comedy. I am somebody who really values comfort movies, and to me this is like the ultimate comfort movie. It's not a perfect movie by any means, okay, but I do think it's just a comedy that has a lot of heart. I've probably seen this movie more times than any other movie ever. There was actually a period of time not that long ago where I sort of made an executive decision. I told myself I can't keep watching this movie all the time. I need to take a year off of watching Forgetting Sarah Marshall, because I wanted to see it again with fresh eyes. You know what I mean? It was starting to lose some of its magic. I would honestly give this movie a 35 out of 10. Murder by Numbers. I will just say briefly that this is a movie that I really love, but I probably wouldn't recommend it. It's a crime thriller from, I think it was probably released in year 2000 or something like that. It's got a very late 90s, early 2000s vibe to it. I think for general audiences, it's not really going to work, but I love it. I just love it. That's all I'm going to say. It's a 10 out of 10. Okay, Life is a House. It's an early 2000s family drama. I would say it's a kind of a mediocre one of those, okay? But it's fine. It's fine. I'm going to say this is 9 out of 10. Donnie Darko. This is also an all-time favorite of mine. Such a comforting movie for any young adult. I feel like even today, this would still be a very comforting movie. Also, just like the mystery of this movie is, I think, what I really love about it. The fact that it doesn't really explain itself is kind of the best part. David Lynch used to say something that I just want to bring up right now. He used to say that he likes stories that have a certain amount of structure, but also hold a lot of abstractions. And those abstractions are what give you room to dream. And I think this movie is exactly like that. It gives you a lot of room to dream. I find this movie to be endlessly fascinating. And I feel like every time I watch it, I'm kind of watching it with a new perspective in a way. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's an amazing movie. I would give this like the highest possible score I can give it. It's like infinity out of 10 or something like that. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Not that long ago, I probably would have told you that this was my favorite horror movie, or at least one of my favorite horror movies. But nowadays, I'm really enjoying a lot of like the A24 elevated horror stuff. And I do kind of feel like maybe Midsommar has taken the throne. But this is still it's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of horror. And honestly, I think for me, it's all about Leatherface. He's just like one of the most insane killers out there, Also, I think just like the whole setup of like this being just like a crazy family that lives out in the boonies. Such a perfect concept for a horror movie. And this definitely inspired so many different horror movies that came after it. This one I'm giving a 23 out of 10. Lost in Translation. This was actually the first Bill Murray movie that I ever saw, and it's the reason I fell in love with Bill Murray in the first place. I'm actually not a huge fan of like Bill Murray's early comedies, What About Bob and Stripes and all that stuff. What really made me fall in love with his acting was his more like dramatic roles. And I think actually this movie is what led me to watch Wes Anderson movies. And I've loved all his work with Wes Anderson. I've loved all his work with Jim Jarmusch. I'm going to give this one a 12 out of 10. Videodrome. This is a sci-fi classic David Cronenberg movie. Guy gets kind of obsessed with a mysterious TV broadcast. It's sort of like torture porn, snuff film type of stuff. He gets in deep with it and he kind of loses his mind to this program called the Videodrome. Old Toronto is in this movie, which is kind of neat for me, because I am a Toronto boy. This is a great movie. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. Okay, so I got 2 copies of Zero Day here, which I feel like I do have to explain this. I mean, even having 1 copy of Zero Day is gonna make some people think that I'm a psychopath. So what happened is I bought this copy a long time ago, but then I found out that it was region locked, and so I couldn't watch it, and it was disappointing. But then I just kind of forgot about it, and then some years later, I was like, you know what? I do really want a copy of Zero Day. Despite it being a school shooter movie, very disturbing movie, it is one of my favorites. And so I wanted a copy, and I was able to find it. I had to pay a pretty penny for it. It's not exactly the easiest movie to come by, and this is a used copy. It looks like it was from some video store. But yeah, I think it's an excellent movie. I also did a review on this movie. It's one of my most popular videos on this channel. I'm just gonna give it like a 19 out of 10. Ginger Snaps. I think this is actually the first DVD that I ever bought. First DVD in this collection. It all started here. I guess I don't mind saying this. It was a little bit of a sexual awakening for me. I mean, I was already attracted to girls before I saw this movie, but I think this was the movie where I was like, girls can actually be really cool. The Fitzgerald sisters in this movie, super cool girls. Ginger, she's not as cool later in the movie. She does some very questionable things in this movie, but she is turning into a werewolf at the same time, so she kind of has that as an excuse for some of her behavior. This movie was also filmed in Scarborough, which is like not that far from me, really. I can drive to Scarborough, it'll take me like 20 minutes. And it also reminds me of the town that I grew up in. I grew up in Markham, which is another suburb of Toronto. It just feels like home to me. I really love this movie. I'm gonna give it a 12 out of 10. Okay, so I took a little bit of a break. This is now the next day. The battery on my camera died, and also it was getting kind of late. So this is now the next morning, and we're just gonna keep going from where I left off, basically. First movie of the day is called Elephant. This is another Gus Van Sant movie. It is part of his Death trilogy. Gus Van Sant decided to go with non-actors in this movie, and I do admire that choice a lot. I think it is a very bold, creative decision to go with non-actors. But I think, unfortunately, in the case of this movie, it just didn't really work, you know? There are some really stunning wide shots in this movie, and also some really beautiful one-takes, really like long one-takes. But I think sometimes just the performances really stick out like a sore thumb. And that does bring it down a little bit, but still, I'm still gonna give this a 10 out of 10. This is True Grit. This is, probably one of the most accessible Coen Brothers movies. I mean, honestly, pretty much everything about this movie is very good, but I think it just doesn't, compare to the rest of their filmography. Great performances, great casting. This is one of Haley Steinfeld's earliest roles. For me, it's a 9 out of 10. First Reformed. I saw this movie for the first time last year, and it kind of rocked my world. I think because I have a religious background, this movie really speaks to me. This is a very harrowing movie, and I would say for me, it is about just the horrors of being human. It's about a guy who is slowly losing his faith. He's starting to realize that, like, kind of in the end, it doesn't really matter what you believe, Humanity is kind of destined to go extinct. We're all gonna die, and that's just the harsh reality. At the same time, I find this movie to be incredibly beautiful as well, and it has quickly become a favorite for me. I would say this one gets a 16 out of 10. Good time. This is the first movie by the Safdie brothers that I got to see, and I've been excited about their filmmaking ever since, much like the rest of the world. Of all their movies, I think this one is the most thrilling for me. I think maybe I made the mistake of going into Uncut Gems with such high expectations after having seen this one. I do really like that movie, but I don't think it ever topped this one for me. Anyway, I don't really mean to compare all their movies. I just think this one was, again, kind of going back to what I was talking about, how maybe sometimes I just like, the first thing that I see, it tends to be my favorite of the bunch. I also think that it is kind of darker than the rest of their stuff. I mean, as dark as all their movies are, the people in this movie are just so unlikable, you know what I mean? And it's just like, they really don't have very many redeeming characteristics at all. Whereas in Uncut Gems, at least Adam Sandler's character is like a sad sack, and he does show some amount of remorse, In this movie, these guys are just total degenerates. I'm giving this one a 12 out of 10. Lost Highway. This is a great David Lynch movie, and actually this copy of the movie is kind of unique. It's what is it called? I think it's called a PAL version. It's called Pan and Scan. I don't really know what that means, but basically you put this DVD in and it kind of looks like you're watching a VHS, which I think for this movie that kind of works. I mean, if you've seen this movie, you do know that like videotapes, VHS tapes, kind of are a motif in the movie. So watching a movie like this with kind of scuffed quality is it seems fitting to me. I think this is one of Lynch's best movies. From what I understand, not as many people are into it, but I think just for me personally, it is a movie that really plays into a lot of the trends that were happening in kind of the early 2000s and late 90s, and that really is the era that I have such a fondness for. I'm giving this one a 14 out of 10. I'm talking about Spree. It's a very campy horror thriller kind of movie. Joe Keery plays this like young psychopath, really. He plays a rideshare driver in this movie, and he kind of he picks up people and murders them within his car, and it's all live streamed. He's basically trying to go viral, and that's his scheme for going viral. I love this movie. It's so funny, it's so campy. I'm just gonna give this one a 10 out of 10. Spring Breakers. I think this movie is Harmony Korine's most successful movie outside of Gummo. To be honest, I don't know. I mean, I do like the movie, but I don't understand why it's his most successful. I think it's probably just because it was one of his first real Hollywood movies, and he's working with some big names. He's working with James Franco and even Selena Gomez. I think that was like kind of the reason why a lot of people went to go see this, is just because they recognized the big names in it, not really knowing what they were getting themselves into. It's also an interesting detour for Harmony. It sort of was the beginning of his Florida series of movies, which is kind of incomplete. He did this movie, and then he did The Beach Bum, and then there was a third movie. I think it was called The Trap, or like Parent Trap or something like that. But yeah, that movie got canceled kind of very late in the production, unfortunately. But yeah, for Spring Breakers, I still think it's a great one. Much like the rest of his movies, it's very visceral and very shocking, very provocative. It was also exciting at the time, just seeing Harmony doing something a little bit different than what he was known for. I've always admired his work because he just keeps changing. He keeps trying new things, you know. I'm giving Spring Breakers a 10 out of 10. Okay, Zodiac. Great David Fincher crime, thriller, mystery. It is about the Zodiac Killer. I'm guessing everybody has seen this movie. Maybe not, but I actually think this is my favorite David Fincher movie, at least from the ones that I've seen. I rewatched this last year, and it was just as fun. I think because I hadn't seen it for such a long time, it was almost like watching the movie for the first time all over again. Every scene in this movie is like flawless, and like I really can't criticize it at all. This is an easy 10 out of 10. There will be blood. This is kind of a cool copy. This was, for a period of time, people were trying to be a little more environmentally friendly with their releases, and so you can kind of see this as it's basically just cardboard. Of all the Paul Thomas Anderson movies, I would say this ranks very high up on my list, but I also do find it to be the most difficult to watch. It's one that I've seen multiple times, but it is such an upsetting story. This guy, I forget what his name is in the movie, but Daniel Day-Lewis's character is such a scumbag. And as entertaining as the movie is, there are certain things that I feel like I'm just a little bit sensitive to. And I would say, like, I'm not the kind of person who needs to like the characters on screen. They could be horrible people and I could still like the movie. And this is the case of that, exactly. I mean, he is a terrible person, and I still think this is an incredible movie. But yeah, it's just a harder one to like rewatch sometimes for me. But yeah, I'm gonna give it 15 out of 10. This is called Weezer Video Capture Device. It's basically just a collection of like tour footage and music videos. It pretty much follows them throughout the 90s, you know, which I think is what most people would say is the golden age of Weezer. I mean, I would say that as well, myself. Although I am actually somebody who is still a believer. I still listen to Weezer. I mean, I do agree with people when they say that their output since the 90s has not been as good. But at the same time, I do think they put out some really great stuff, even just in recent years. I really liked the White Album. I really liked OK Human. And also there's some really great stuff on the Seasons series of albums that they just did. If you're a fan of Weezer, this is an incredible collection of material here. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. Okay, this movie is called The Chum Scrubber. I would not recommend this to an adult, but if you are an angsty teenager, if you're an edgy teenager like I was, you will probably love this movie. Even to this day, I still like this movie, but I think it's more just for like the nostalgia factor. I don't think it's very well known though, and I'm guessing it would probably be hard to find. But yeah, I mean, it opens with a suicide, and there's a whole kidnapping plot in this. I just think it's really everything that an edgy teenager, you know, suburban kid would love to see in a movie. It's also just got some interesting casting as well, and like people in this that I don't think you would expect. Glenn Close is in this, Ralph Fiennes, as well as Carrie Ann Moss. I feel like people know their careers pretty well, but I feel like probably most people missed this one. I would also say maybe all of those actors I just mentioned, maybe this is one that, you know, they would prefer, that people don't really know about. Not that they did a bad job, you know, but I do think that this movie is just full of stuff that a lot of people would probably cringe at, in the same way that, you know, people cringe at emo music, for example. I just don't think it would work for a lot of people who didn't really grow up in this kind of culture. But for me, yeah, easy 10 out of 10. Next up, we're talking about Moon. This is a pretty interesting one. I was really excited about this movie when it first came out. Sam Rockwell plays a guy that is sent to the moon by himself, and he's really just up there. I think he has like a 3-year contract to just stay up there and mine the moon for its resources. I actually did rewatch this just a couple months ago, and I think what I found is that it doesn't hold up exactly as I remember it. I have a lot of admiration for this movie, and I think one of the most notable things about it is Sam Rockwell's performance. I mean, he's good in everything pretty much, but this is like basically a one-man show, and he completely knocks it out of the park. It's got a really great concept, but I can't really get into it without spoiling things for you. I just think that for me, a lot of the scenes in this movie are very contrived. And when I say that, like, I do know it is a sci-fi movie and it's not real anyway, but I think even within the rules of its own world, it doesn't really make sense to me. But that being said, I still have a lot of admiration for the movie. I would give it a 9 out of 10. American Beauty. It's certainly an iconic movie. I do actually think it captured the spirit of the times when this movie was made. I actually rewatched this one as well not too long ago, and it's also a movie that I don't like as much as I did when I was younger, but I do think it's just not as relevant to what life is like today. I think some of the characters play too much into stereotypes, although the one exception to that is probably the main character, Lester, because he's a middle-aged man who kind of becomes obsessed with this teenage girl, and that kind of becomes the catalyst for everything else that happens in this movie. And I feel like that is actually more relevant today than ever. But I will say, like, I still like it. I like weirdly over-dramatic stuff. I like how exaggerated it is. I'm gonna give it a 10 out of 10. This one is in a similar vein as American Beauty. This one's called The United States of Leland. I actually really love this movie. It's a very flawed movie. If you watch it, there's just parts that'll probably make you cringe, but I think it's great. It's very similar to American Beauty. I feel like a lot of movies that were coming out in the early 2000s had like a similar kind of tone to them, and this is one of them. I'm not sure that many people even know about this one, but it is a star-studded cast. Kevin Spacey, Don Cheadle, Jenna Malone, Ryan Gosling. I think, again, this is a movie that was very much of its time, and if you were around back then, you will probably really connect with this movie. But if you weren't, I doubt you would like it at all. But for me, it's a 10 out of 10. This movie's called W. It's about George W. Bush. It is an Oliver Stone movie. Josh Brolin plays George. I saw this movie when it came out, and I really liked it, and to this day I still really like it. I think what's so compelling about this movie to me is that it has a very sympathetic perspective on George W. Bush. In a way, it was my introduction to American politics. I was very young when I saw this. I knew that this guy was the president, but I didn't really know anything about him. I wasn't really paying attention to any politics at that time. Honestly, all I really knew about him is that Rage Against the Machine didn't like him very much, and so that meant that I also didn't like him very much. But after watching this movie, I also gained some real sympathy for the guy. I think I always have been somebody who likes to, see the human first before I see the presentation of who they are publicly. And I liked that this movie kind of encouraged me to keep going in that direction. Although I will say, I mean, surprisingly to me, I did learn that Oliver Stone believes that George W. Bush was the worst president that America has ever had. However, that quote does predate Donald Trump, so I'm not sure if he would still think that, but it's just a surprising thing for me to hear, considering how sympathetic his perspective is in this movie. I mean, maybe I'm misreading the movie. I don't know. But I mean, at the end of the day, this guy is still responsible for the Iraq War. It was a completely unjustified war, and it was a complete disaster. So I think maybe that's what Oliver Stone means. I think he kind of just thinks of this guy as such a buffoon, basically. And even if you can sympathize with him, that's probably not enough. You know what I mean? I will give W a 10 out of 10. Land of the Lost. This is a comedy that I feel like I'm just on my own with. I don't think anybody else likes this movie, but I love it. I just got a soft spot for Will Ferrell, and also Danny McBride is in this. I love their chemistry in this movie. There are some really low moments in this movie that I feel like you kind of just have to get through in order to get to the good stuff. But I honestly think the good stuff is worth it. I would honestly recommend maybe just watching the first 20 minutes or so. And if you watch that first part and you like it, then I think you'll actually get something out of the rest of it too. For me, it's a very worthwhile movie. I would give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, we're getting a lot of Harmony Korine movies now. This one's called Julian Donkey Boy. I picked this up at a pop-up shop, and I got it for pretty cheap. I think they just didn't know what they had, because this is actually a pretty hard movie to find physical copies of. So I'm really thankful that I have a copy of this. I think maybe Harmony was on a bit of a high when he was making this movie, because his career was starting to take off, and he was starting to get connected with really big names. This is his first collaboration with Werner Herzog. Herzog plays a role in this movie. I know that Harmony was someone that really idolized Werner Herzog, so I think he must have been super excited to be working with him. This is also one of the only movie that adheres to the Dogma 95 rules, I guess. I always think it's pretty cool when artists sort of decide to adhere to some kind of limitation like that. It is a pretty sad story about this schizophrenic guy who kind of falls through the cracks because nobody really cares about him, and it's no fault of his own, but he gets into so much trouble, and the ending of this movie is particularly disturbing. I really like this one, and again, I'm very grateful to have a copy. I'm gonna give this a 12 out of 10. Okay, Barton Fink. This one's got a little bit of a dust on it, so I have not watched this in a very long time. This is a Coen Brothers movie that I think it's definitely not one of their more popular movies. I remember liking it when I was younger, but I feel like I would like to watch it again before I really talk about it. I really don't remember it very well. I think for right now, I'm just going to give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, Donnie Darko, director's cut. I already talked about Donnie Darko a lot, so I'm not going to talk about the movie a whole bunch more. But honestly, this is definitely the inferior cut. The theatrical version of this movie is just a lot better, in my opinion. The real problem with this one is that they explain it. They try to explain the movie. And like I was saying about the theatrical cut, the mystery of the movie is kind of the best part. So I have no idea why they did this. I mean, they kind of took like a 50 billion trillion zillion out of 10 movie, and then they turned it into a 10 out of 10 movie. I mean, it's still a 10 out of 10. It's not a bad movie, but I think I've only watched it a couple times, because every time I want to watch Donnie Darko, I'm going to watch the theatrical cut. But whatever, still a 10 out of 10. This is a movie called Tape. I think it's one of Linklater's lesser-known movies. This is a movie that I think if you are a creative person, This is a great one to watch if you just want to get inspired. It's the kind of movie that will make you really feel like you can do it for yourself, if you know what I mean. And even for me, like, I'm not a filmmaker, but seeing stuff like this, it just really does give me a little more confidence. It just makes you feel like you don't need a whole production crew. And you also don't need like the best gear. You can just work with what you got and you can still come up with something amazing. This is a 10 out of 10. Fantastic Mr. Fox. This is, I think this is one of the best like stop motion animation movies that I've ever seen. It's got like all the Wes Anderson trademarks in there, a lot of really quirky writing, just amazing puppetry and amazing miniatures throughout the whole thing. And it's also just very family friendly, you know? I feel like a lot of Wes Anderson movies for young people, it would probably just go over their heads, but this one is very accessible. I would be surprised if you watched this movie and you didn't like it. Yeah, great movie, 10 out of 10. This is Darren Aronofsky's first film called Pi. Again, this is one I just have not seen in a very long time. I remember I picked this up after I watched Requiem for a Dream. I just wanted to explore more of Aronofsky's work. I don't remember a whole lot about it. I know it is about like a mathematician. It says here, a brilliant mathematician teeters on the brink of insanity as he searches for an elusive numerical code in this critically acclaimed sci-fi thriller. That's true. That kind of reminds me, the main character's name is Max. He's trying to find like a universal truth within mathematics. It's a pretty trippy one, and I like this probably better than a lot of the Darren Aronofsky films that have been coming out as of late. I did like Caught Stealing, actually. Caught Stealing was a nice change of direction for him, but I was very mixed on The Whale, very mixed on Mother. But yeah, if you like his movies, I think this is one of his stronger ones. Since I haven't seen it in a long time, it's hard to give it a rating exactly. I think I'll just give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, another Wes Anderson movie. This one's called The Darjeeling Limited. You know what? When it comes to Wes Anderson movies, I think this one is like dead center, right in the middle of the road. And when I say that, I mean it's a really good movie. Wes Anderson altogether is such an incredible filmmaker. And even when he is making like a middle of the road version of his own movies, it's still going to be an amazing movie. The only thing about it is that it kind of loses me in the third act. I really enjoy like the first 2/3 of this movie a lot, but then near the end I kind of just lose interest. But I still love it, you know? I would still give it a 10 out of 10. Akira. Akira is a classic anime. I'm sure you all know about Akira if you're watching this video. Maybe this is an interesting time for me to say that I'm not particularly fond of anime. I mean, maybe that is already clear. At the beginning of this video, I did say that I don't really care about Ghibli movies. This one, though, is kind of a cut above. And I think maybe in comparison to Ghibli movies, I think I just like, you know, darker kinds of stories. Nothing wrong with a lighthearted story, but especially with anime, I just feel like so much of it is like action focused, or like it's more of a spectacle than it is anything else a lot of the time. And Akira is actually not an exception to that, but I guess if you're gonna give me a spectacle, I want to see something more like this. I think I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. This is a German movie called The Experiment. This movie is based, or I guess at least inspired by the Stanford prison experiment. It gets pretty disturbing, you know, like the whole thing with the guards kind of abusing their power against the prisoners. They really go all in on making that about as horrifying and terrible as you could possibly make it. But yeah, for me, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. This movie is called The Last Life in the Universe. This is a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful movie. It's about this guy that is very much obsessed with suicide. He's very determined to kill himself. He's had plenty of failed attempts, and the story kind of starts on this one day. He goes to a bridge to jump off the bridge, kill himself and all that. And just at the moment that he's about to jump, there's a car accident that happens right behind him, and that kind of stops him. And he tries to help, you know, he's going there with good intentions, and he meets this woman, and it kind of becomes about this this beautiful friendship that develops between the two of them. I won't say anything more than that, but I do really love this movie. I think it's also got one of the best soundtracks that I've ever heard in a movie. I love going back to the soundtrack in this movie. It's just so calming and peaceful and haunting at the same time. Highly recommend this movie. I would say, for me, this is a 16 out of 10. 1408. This is one of those Stephen King novels that was made into a movie about a haunted hotel room. I'm not always into the Stephen King movies out there, but this one's great. It's just such a great time. I guess that's kind of a weird thing to say about a horror movie, calling it a great time. But I am somebody who, when I watch horror movies, I don't get scared. I just find them exciting for the most part. This one is just so creative in the way that it's telling this ghost story, because it's really just a haunted room. It's not really ghosts exactly. It's the whole room is just like fucked up. Also, John Cusack, I think he's like the perfect pick for a role like this. He's like a ghost hunter, but he doesn't actually believe in ghosts. And he's also an author. He writes books about his ghost hunting experiences. But he's just such a super jaded guy, and I feel like John Cusack is perfect at playing that kind of role. Yeah, I would give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, little surprise here. This is a Deftones promotional DVD. I was actually in their fan club, and if you were in the fan club at that time, they would actually mail you stickers and stuff like this. And I think this DVD just contains the music video for the song Hexagram. I think I had like 10 copies of this, and I think as part of the fan club, they were sort of encouraging you to just like pass this out to your friends and stuff like that. But yeah, nothing special about it. It's just a music video. But I remember receiving this and being very excited. Deftones was my favorite band for many years in grade school. I'm just going to give it a 10 out of 10 because it's a cool music video. And I also have some great memories attached to receiving this and watching it for the first time. Another Darren Aronofsky movie. Everybody knows this movie. It's a great movie. I don't know, man. I don't think I want to ever watch it again. It's a really fucking hard to watch movie. I kind of just have no choice. I have to give this movie a 10 out of 10. 28 Days Later. Excellent zombie flick. I feel like this is actually probably for me the best Alex Garland movie out there. I also quite like Ex Machina. I went to go see this in theaters, but I think I was too young. I think I was like this is like an 18A movie. In Canada, 18A is the same as R-rated. And I was just a little too young. I was probably like 16 or 17. And what happened is I went to go see the movie with a couple friends, and they got there before me. And they both got in. They both got their tickets, and they went in. I came in a bit late. And when I went up to buy my ticket, the person asked my age, and then the jig was up, and I didn't get in. And I forget exactly how it worked, because at that time I didn't have a cell phone, but I did eventually tell my friends what happened, and they also just like refunded their tickets. They didn't want to, leave me out. It was very nice of them. But yeah, it's kind of a funny memory of being young and just wanting to see this movie. I mean, we did eventually just find our own way of watching the movie. And honestly, I do think this is maybe one of the best zombie movies that I've ever seen. One of the things I really like about this movie is that it's not just a horror movie. They also insert a lot of beauty. The movie is still a total nightmare, but they do include these like little tiny pockets of very peaceful, beautiful stuff. I thought that was a really cool contrast. I'm giving this movie a 10 out of 10. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind. This is actually directed by George Clooney. It's pretty good. I have some mixed feelings about the way that it looks, and if you've seen this movie, you will know what I mean. They did some weird stuff with like the saturation, and sometimes I think they're kind of using negatives. I don't really know why George Clooney decided to do that, but I still like the movie. It's a very compelling story, and I think also watching this movie was my introduction to Sam Rockwell. I think I would give it a 9 out of 10. Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights is amazing. It's just amazing. I think this movie is everything that you could possibly want from a dramatic comedy. The dramatic elements get very real, and the funnier bits are just like genius level as well. I have to give this like at least a 14 out of 10. This is Old Boy. But I remember showing this to some of my friends on my 30th birthday. I thought it would be kind of funny to watch a movie called Old Boy on my 30th birthday. And I remember being surprised by how disturbed my friends were, because I had never really thought of it as a disturbing movie. In hindsight, of course it's a disturbing movie. If you haven't seen Old Boy, I would highly recommend it. It is an excellent revenge movie. It gets a 10 out of 10. Okay, this movie is called Brick. This movie was so exciting to me as a teenager, and I really feel like it is made for young adults. I remember also having to go to like the art house theater in order to see it, which at that age, it was just kind of exciting for me as I was just getting interested in film. The dialogue in this movie is meant to be extremely witty, and that's something I used to find very, very charming. But as an adult, it kind of, it doesn't work for me as well. But I guess like it's a noir. It's a noir for young adults. It's a movie that's like kind of too cool for its own good, maybe is how I would put it. But yeah, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. Okay, we're going to talk about Rushmore now. Every time I think about Wes Anderson movies like this, I'm just like, man, like, this guy's made so many amazing movies. I'm going to give it an 18 out of 10. Final movie in the collection. It's called Three Kings. This was also one of the first DVDs I ever bought. It's an interesting cast, Spike Jonze, George Clooney, Mark Wahlberg, Ice Cube. It's kind of weird that they all were working together. It's about a group of soldiers who, they're in the Iraq War, but they sort of decide to secretly do a heist. They're trying to steal some gold. This one has some really interesting, like, experimental camera work, like weird technical stuff that I don't think I've seen in any other movie. There actually is like a notice at the beginning of this movie. It kind of just says like everything you're about to see in this movie looks that way intentionally. There's nothing wrong with your TV. There's nothing wrong with your DVD. I do admire it for that. I always admire people who are willing to experiment with things. I wish I remembered it a little better to give it like a proper rating. But for now, I'm just going to give it 9 out of 10. Hello again. This is the reshoot portion of this video. There was one small chunk where, basically just one movie that I talked about where the footage it was not usable. So I'm going to just talk about that one movie again, because it would be a shame to leave it out. And that movie is The Royal Tenenbaums. Generally on this channel, I don't like to talk about things objectively, or at least I do it as little as I can, but this video is really just meant to be kind of entertaining, so I am gonna say I do think that maybe objectively, this might be Wes Anderson's best movie. And I think the real reason for that is really just a mix of like the complexity in this movie, the scope of everything, the maturity, as well as just Wes Anderson's trademark style. This was also an interesting one for me because when I first saw this movie, I hadn't seen, people like Ben Stiller or Luke Wilson in, more serious roles like this. I knew them from like Zoolander and Blue Streak and stuff like that. It's always nice to see people taking on like a variety of different roles. You know what I mean? And it shows that they really have some depth. For this one, I'm giving it a 15 out of 10. One of the best Wes Anderson movies out there. That's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'm actually kind of sick with a cold right now, and I'm still editing the stuff that you just saw about this new instrument the other day. It's like a synth saxophone. I don't really know how to play it yet, but I think it's pretty neat. And I felt like showing it off for a second. The next video I plan to do is going to be a recap of what I watched in February. But that's it for now. I hope you're okay, and I will see you later.